40 years. That's how long Helen and I were together. She was my world, my partner, the one person I trusted more than anyone. But trust is a fragile thing, isn't it? You think you know someone, you think your life is solid and unshakable. I thought our marriage was everything people envied, a bond built on love, loyalty, and all those promises we made decades ago. But sometimes, the cracks appear where you least expect them. I remember the day it started, though I didn't realize it at the time. It was just another afternoon, the kind you forget because nothing remarkable happens. Or so I thought. That's when Ryan moved in next door. A friendly young guy, polite, always smiling. Helen said he reminded her of our son when he was younger. And honestly, I didn't think twice about it. Not then. But looking back now, that was the day my life started to change. The day everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and my own wife began to slip away. How did it all fall apart? How did the woman I devoted my life to let someone else into hers? I'm still trying to understand it myself. I'm George, 64 years old. My wife, Helen, and I have been together for 40 years. 40 years of shared memories, quiet mornings, laughter around the dinner table, and the kind of love you think is unbreakable. Helen's been my rock, my best friend, the woman I've trusted more than anyone. We've built this life together, raised children, faced challenges, and celebrated countless milestones. Over the years, we grew older together, but I always believed we had something special, something that no amount of time could diminish. Life here, in this house, with her, was everything I ever wanted. It was good. It was more than good, it was perfect. Then Ryan moved in next door. I didn't know it then, but that's when things began to change. Ryan was 26, young, friendly, and full of energy. He seemed harmless, like a breath of fresh air in a neighborhood that had started to feel a little too familiar. Always offering to help with little things, mowing the lawn, fixing a broken fence, or just stopping by to chat. He wasn't the type of guy you'd expect to raise any alarms. But there was something about him. He had this charm, this energy that seemed to draw people in. And Helen, well, she loved having him around. She'd tell me how much he reminded her of our son when he was younger, innocent, full of life, and always ready to make people smile. She said he had a good heart. And I believed her after all, what reason did I have not to? He was just a friendly neighbor, a kid who wanted to be helpful. But the more I think about it, the more I realize how easily he started slipping into our lives, becoming a regular presence in our home. At first, I didn't see it. It was all so subtle, too subtle for me to question. He was just a nice young man who wanted to help out. What harm could there be in that? I didn't realize it at the time, but that was the beginning of the end. It wasn't just about the chores or the small talk over the fence. It was something more. Something I couldn't see, and wouldn't understand until it was too late. And looking back now, I wonder, if I'd paid more attention, would I have been able to stop it before everything changed? It started small. At first, I didn't think much of it. But then, little things began to change. Helen, who had always been more of a jeans and a sweater kind of woman, started dressing up more, putting on outfits I hadn't seen in years, wearing things that made her look different. It wasn't a big deal, or so I told myself. Maybe she was just feeling good about herself. I mean, we've been together for decades. Who's to say she couldn't enjoy a little attention now and then, but then there were the hours she spent in the garden. At first, it was just tending to the flowers, something she always loved. But soon, I noticed she was out there more often, sometimes for hours, working side by side with Ryan. I told myself it was nothing. Just neighborly bonding. But when I'd peek out the window, I saw her laughing. Really laughing, like the kind of laugh I hadn't heard in years. The kind of laugh I hadn't been able to spark in her for a long time. It wasn't just the casual chatter you might expect between neighbors. It was something more that I kept telling myself I was imagining things. But deep down, a nagging feeling started to grow. One evening, I came home a little earlier than usual. I pulled into the driveway and saw them, Helen and Ryan, sitting on the porch. Not just talking, but talking like old friends. They were leaning in, sharing jokes, eyes locked in a way that made me feel like I wasn't even there. It felt off, but I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Instead, I forced myself to ignore it, but things only got worse from there. Ryan's car began showing up more often. I'd come home from work and find it parked out front when I knew he wasn't supposed to be there. It became a regular sight, Ryan's car in the driveway, and Helen nowhere to be found. Every time, that feeling in my stomach twisted a little more. I couldn't shake it. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew something wasn't right. It was a Friday afternoon. I came home early, feeling a rare sense of excitement. I thought I'd surprise Helen with a little spontaneous dinner, maybe even take her out. It had been a while since we'd done something like that. I walked in the front door, expecting to hear her moving around, maybe humming in the kitchen. But the house was quiet. Too quiet. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured she was maybe resting, or out in the garden, like she'd been doing so much lately. But then, I heard it. Laughter. It wasn't just the sound of casual chatter, it was deep, carefree laughter. A laugh that I hadn't heard in years, the kind of laugh that made me feel like I was the last person on earth to hear it. I froze in the hallway, trying to figure out where it was coming from. The laughter echoed from upstairs. My heart skipped a beat that I don't know what made me walk toward the stairs. Maybe I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But the closer I got, the more it felt like a weight was pressing down on my chest. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, staring up toward the bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, and I could see shadows moving inside that I should have turned around. I should have left. But something inside me, pushed me forward. I climbed the stairs quietly, each step feeling like an eternity. And when I reached the door, I didn't know what to expect, but I knew whatever was happening behind that door was going to change everything. That I pushed the door open just a little, not enough to make a sound, but enough to see them. There they were. Helen and Ryan. Sitting on the bed, laughing like teenagers. Their faces were so close, too close. The way she looked at him. It wasn't just friendly. It wasn't just a passing moment. They were completely lost in each other, and I was nothing more than a shadow in the doorway. For a moment, they didn't even notice me. I could hear their conversation, the way they spoke so casually, so comfortably. There was a familiarity there, something I couldn't put my finger on. But it didn't matter. My heart sank. I could feel the blood draining from my face. It was like I couldn't breathe. That I don't know what came over me, but all I could do was close the door slowly, trying not to make a sound. I turned around and walked out of the house, my legs shaking beneath me. I don't even remember how I got outside, but I was standing there in the yard, my hands trembling, my mind racing. I felt like I was drowning, and yet, everything around me was silent, as if the world had stopped turning. What had I just seen? How long had this been going on? The questions flooded my mind, but no answers came. Only one thing was clear, everything I thought I knew was a lie. That evening, I couldn't hold it in any longer. The images of what I had seen upstairs were still burned into my mind, Helen and Ryan, so close, so at ease with each other, like they were the only two people in the world. I tried to push it down, tried to ignore it, but I couldn't. It was like a weight pressing on my chest, choking me with every breath. Dinner was quiet, too quiet. Helen sat across from me, picking at her food, her eyes darting nervously every now and then, as if she knew something was wrong. I tried to be normal, to act like everything was fine. But the tension between us was unbearable. Every second that ticked by felt like an eternity. I couldn't keep pretending anymore. Finally, I couldn't take it. I set my fork down, and my voice came out sharper than I meant it to. Helen, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, is there something going on with you and Ryan? The words hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. She froze, her hand trembling slightly as she reached for her glass. Her face went pale, and for a split second, I saw a panic flicker in her eyes. But she didn't answer right away. Instead, she just stared at me, her lips parted as if she couldn't find the words. I could feel her mind racing, trying to figure out what to say, how to explain what had already been laid bare. Then, slowly, tears welled up in her eyes. She blinked a few times, and when she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "George," she said, choking on her words, I felt lonely. Invisible. Like you didn't see me anymore. Ryan, he made me feel alive again." She wiped her eyes quickly, as if trying to brush away the tears, but they kept coming. "It wasn't like that. It wasn't physical. I swear. I never wanted to hurt you." But the words hit me like a slap across the face. She said it wasn't physical, that it was just emotional, but to me, it didn't matter. She had betrayed me. She had let someone else into her heart, someone who wasn't supposed to be there. And in that moment, I couldn't distinguish between the pain of betrayal and the anger building up inside me. The love I thought was unbreakable was now fractured, shattered by her words. She looked at me, her face full of regret, but it didn't matter. What was left to say? How could I look at her the same way again after everything that had unfolded? I wanted to scream, to lash out, but instead, I just sat there, paralyzed, feeling the weight of her confession crashing down on me. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating, as I realized that everything had changed. That night, I couldn't sleep. The bed felt empty, even though she was lying right next to me. I kept staring at the ceiling, my mind racing in 100 different directions. I couldn't escape what had just happened. What she had said. The pain was like a constant ache deep in my chest, pulling me in every direction, making it hard to breathe. I couldn't stop asking myself, how did we get here? 40 years of marriage, and yet it felt like everything had unraveled in a single moment that I kept replaying the scene over and over in my mind, her words, her tears, the way she tried to explain it, as if that somehow made it better. But it didn't. It didn't make anything better. I loved her, I had always loved her, but that betrayal, it was like a knife to my gut. How could she do this to me? How could she betray everything we had built together, everything I had trusted her with? Was it my fault? That thought kept swirling around, relentless. Did I miss something? Was I so blind to the changes, the distance between us? Had I been so caught up in my own life that I failed to see the emptiness she was feeling? Maybe I should have been more attentive, more present. Maybe, if I had tried harder, I could have kept her from falling into his arms that I tossed and turned, my mind never quieting. The more I thought about it, the more I felt like I was suffocating. I didn't want to feel angry, but I couldn't help it. I didn't want to resent her, but every time I thought about what she'd done, it felt like I was drowning in my own emotions. And then the other question hit me, could I ever forgive her? I loved her so much, but the pain of what she had done, could I ever let it go? Could I really look at her again and not see the man who had taken something so precious away from me? She had given part of herself to someone else, someone who didn't deserve it. And I couldn't even begin to understand why that I wanted to reach out to her, to hold her, but the anger, the hurt, it was like a wall between us. I couldn't be near her, not like this. Not when everything felt broken, shattered beyond repair. I felt lost, uncertain of what the future held, and terrified of where we would go from here. That I never imagined that the woman I'd spent my life with would betray me like this. And yet, here I was, faced with the aftermath, trying to figure out if what we had was worth saving, or if it was already too late. Helen suggested we go to counseling. At first, I resisted. I wasn't ready to face her, let alone sit in front of a stranger and talk about everything that had gone wrong. The thought of opening up, of sharing the things I was feeling, felt unbearable. How could I sit across from her, knowing what she had done, and pretend like everything was going to be okay, but deep down, I knew I couldn't just walk away from 40 years together. It was more than just the time we'd spent, it was the life we had built. The memories, the laughter, the quiet moments we'd shared. I loved her, despite everything. And I realized that if I didn't try, I'd lose it all. So, reluctantly, I agreed. The first few sessions were excruciating. It felt like every word was pulled from my soul, like I was being exposed in ways I couldn't control. The therapist asked questions, and Helen and I stumbled through them, barely making sense of our emotions. I could see how hard it was for her too, how much guilt weighed on her. But it wasn't just about her. I had to confront myself, too. That I end therapy, I came face to face with something I hadn't been willing to see before. I had taken her for granted. In my mind, I thought everything was fine. I thought our routine was enough, that the years we'd spent together were a guarantee. But I had stopped seeing her. Stopped noticing the little things that mattered. I had been so wrapped up in my own world, my own work, that I didn't realize how much she had been yearning for something more. Helen opened up too. She admitted that she had felt ignored, invisible for so long. She didn't say it to hurt me, she didn't know how else to express the loneliness she felt. She told me how Ryan made her feel seen again, made her feel wanted. It wasn't just the affair that had caused the rift, it was the years of unmet needs, the small cracks that had formed over time, that finally led her to seek attention elsewhere. That it wasn't easy to hear. It wasn't easy to admit. But as we kept coming back to therapy, we began to understand each other in ways we hadn't before. The anger I'd been carrying started to loosen its grip on me. And while I didn't have all the answers, I realized that there was a path forward, a way to rebuild, even if it meant taking small steps. Therapy didn't fix everything overnight. We still had so much work to do, but it was the first time in a long time I felt like we were on the same team again. We were finally talking about the things we'd both been avoiding for years. And for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we could find our way back to each other. Helen cut all ties with Ryan. It wasn't easy, not by a long shot. There were moments when I could see the struggle in her eyes, how hard it was for her to walk away from someone who had made her feel alive again. But she did it. She knew it was the only way we could begin to heal. I could see that she was trying, truly trying to make things right. And that meant everything to me. It wasn't an instant fix. There were still nights when I woke up feeling that same emptiness, that same hurt. There were times when the anger flared up again, and I had to fight to keep it from taking over. But with each passing day, it became a little easier to breathe, a little easier to look at her and not feel like I'd been betrayed. We started small, talking more, being present for each other in ways we hadn't been in years. We rediscovered the things that had brought us together in the first place, the quiet moments, the shared jokes, the little gestures that spoke volumes. That I can't say things are perfect, because they're not. There's still work to be done, and I know it will take time to fully rebuild what we once had. But we're trying. We're putting in the effort, every single day, to understand each other better, to love each other more deeply. And that's what matters. That I don't know where this journey will take us, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like we're on the right path. The scars may never fade completely, but they're a reminder of how far we've come, and how much we're willing to fight for each other. And maybe that's enough. For now, betrayal leaves scars. There's no denying that. The pain cuts deep, and sometimes it feels like those wounds will never fully heal. But through all the heartache, I've learned something important. Sometimes, it's the hardest moments that teach you what's truly worth fighting for. The love you thought was lost, the bond you thought was broken, can sometimes be rebuilt if you're willing to put in the work. That I can't say I have all the answers, and I won't pretend that everything is perfect now. But what I do know is this: we're still here, still trying, still working through the mess we made together. And that means something. So, I want to ask you, the same question I've been asking myself: would you forgive someone who broke your trust, or would you walk away? Is there a line you simply can't cross, or do you believe in second chances, I know everyone's situation is different, but hearing your thoughts on this would mean a lot to me. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think, and if you enjoyed this video, if you can relate or just want more real stories that get to the heart of life's toughest moments, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. I'm posting daily, sharing raw, honest stories just like this one, stories that make you think, reflect, and maybe even see things a little differently. Thanks for watching, and if you've ever faced something similar, just know you're not alone. We all have our battles, but it's how we choose to fight that defines us. Take care, and I'll see you next time.